The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of state in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people just like me. This is 3D Politics. Hosted by me, your fine host, the Verbal Viking, right here every Monday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Facebook Live. Catch me at verbalviking@gmail.com and always at verbalviking.com.
Ooh, is this Twilight Zone, Tom?
Here he comes. It's pretty close. He's connecting to audio. Jay Stiegel, of course.
I don't think Rod Sterling had sound effects as good as this one.
Well, no, he was a little bit behind Star Trek. Or in front of it, I should say. So I know that Ray Stiegel is connecting to audio right now. We're continuing to have transporter problems. Scotty, I've got to have more power. Jay Stiegel continuing to connect to, I got to say, from ancient Rome to the Tulsa City Council circa 1995, the abuse of the overuse of the emergency clause has been a bane against citizens since time immemorial. The idea of a dictator in Rome was we give him ultimate power for 6 months or whatever it was. There was definitely a time limit, and the reason dictator took on a bad connotation was because they wouldn't give up their power after the sunset clause. This was ancient Rome in circa 1995. Tulsa City Council passing the city municipal employees retirement fund under an emergency clause, and I'm like, who has to hurry up and retire in 1995, right? But somebody did. And so here we go again with the concept. The problem is more than simply the overreach of government during an emergency. It's the definition of emergency. Literally, they're calling this pandemic an emergency, which, I'm not one to discount the reality of viruses, but a less than 2% if you're over 60 death rate, less than 1% for those over 60. The overreaction of the emergency is ridiculous. What do you say, Jay?
Tom, I think you hit the nail on the head there. How do we define this? And even in our state statute, we don't have a definition provided for us for what a pandemic is. So the definition that's being utilized right now is really a natural disaster, but we only find that definition in the Riot Control and Prevention Act, which here again hasn't been invoked. And the argument is it even applicable to begin with? Right. However, I'd like to point back to history, even during the time of our Civil War, that the Supreme Court did not put our constitutional rights or the need to exercise those on the back burner.
Yes.
And our founders felt so strongly about it that they fought a war about it.
Yes.
So, our constitutional rights mean everything to us, and we need to do everything in our power to protect those as a people, because that's ours.
Oh, yeah. Wow. There it is, kids. We're coming up on the half-hour break. I want to thank Jay Stiegel, House of Representative, District 43, for coming out and being on the 3D Politics show. Jay, we appreciate you and everything you're doing out there. Will you come back and see us again sometime?
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Right. Excellent. We appreciate you having out. We're going to beam you out at this point. We'll see if Tell it works us, Ken Reddick, what was your experience? How did it go down?
It was great. It was just like any other Trump rally. A lot of patriots, a lot of flags, a lot of veterans, a lot of good vibes. And I spent most of the morning just walking around, visiting all the monuments, documenting the event. And I shared with a lot of people, asked a lot of people questions. I actually did see the Viking guy remove his pelts in the middle of, I believe it was 14th Street. And then he held up a sign that said Q sent me. So I was intrigued. I went up to the guy and I said, that's quite the statement. Who is Q? I'd like to know if he sent you, who is Q? Because we're all wondering.
So you actually talked to the guy with the helmet?
Yeah, shortly. A
Oh,
couple
nice
minutes.
job.
I just wanted
Nice
to know.
job.
I asked him where did he get all the pelts, and then I told him about a friend that does trapping, and then I asked him about his sign, and we just had a short conversation. But he seemed like a real, just I don't know, charismatic kind of guy. But he didn't seem like he was there to start an insurrection.
Hey, did you get close to the Capitol? And what about all the violence?
Yeah, I did get pretty close to the Capitol. About as close as about 50,000 other people. We went and stood on the lawn. I documented the whole thing. I was on Facebook Live my entire march down the National Mall. I kept showing shots of the entire group marching down Constitution. It was well planned out. There was nothing in Trump's speech that incited us or inspired us to go marching down to the Capitol. I knew days in advance what parts of DC to avoid because Antifa would be having a rally. DC police confirmed our fears of where to stay away from, where they had noticed other rallies happening to oppose ours. And then when I was walking down the National Mall, we were actually approached by a guy that was wondering why we were mentioning Antifa, another buddy of mine who was also Facebook Live at the time. And we went together. So we were walking down the National Mall. A guy runs up to us, asks us what we're talking about Antifa for, but in a more threatening way, like, why are we mentioning Antifa?
Yeah.
And then, telling us not to talk about Antifa and stuff like that. And by the time we were at the front of the line, by the time we walked up to the actual Capitol, they're at the circle where Constitution ends. And I think that's 6th Street that runs north-south. But I did see Capitol Police removing barricades. So I started to walk that way thinking, there's my route up. I can get up through there because I didn't want to climb a wall where everyone was standing. So turns out, I don't know why he was moving the barricades, because as soon as he did that, a lot of people charged through, and it seemed like about a half a dozen to a dozen Capitol Police officers did follow them up, in about a half sprint speed all the way up to the stairs where the scaffolding and everything was.
Ken, this is important. Was that
Okay.
the west side of the Capitol or the east side? Supreme Court?
The west side.
West side.
West side.
Gotcha.
Where the
So
inauguration stages.
It's the mall side.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
The National Mall side, where
Correct.
where they host the inauguration.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So they run up, and a dozen guys take the scaffolding I think it looked like a camera mount, national televised camera mount scaffolding. They mount their flags up to the top of that.
Yep.
Everyone stands back, and the Capitol Police form a wall, and it didn't seem any different than anywhere else that we had ever stood and just in a large group waiting to hear some information. It was about 12:30 p.m. there, and we knew that the joint session was going to start at 1 p.m. and we knew they would go alphabetically, and we knew that the first state that would probably be challenged would be Arizona. So all this news is spreading all around the crowd. We're all very just
Ken, one more thing. Trump continued to speak till after 1 p.m.
That's
so
true.
Trump was still holding his speech, and his last comments at the end of the speech was, now everybody march peaceably to the Capitol. So that breach happened before Trump even told anybody.
As a freak, I will say he did not use the word peaceably, to my recollection.
Peacefully, yes. Yes, I have the recording. He said peacefully. He said peacefully.
All right.
I might be losing you.
Uh-oh.
Well,
come on, Scotty.
we need more power.
We've got to.
Can't do it, Captain.
Got him more power.
I can't do it, Captain.
I told you
I need more time.
Episode. It was literally last episode I needed more power.
There he is.
God.
Sorry, guys.
His job.
All right. Transporter works.
Scotty, we got to close it out at some point. Reddick, what do you got to say before we get out of here?
Support local businesses. It's going to be a hard season for everyone, and fight back against that cancel culture. The modern day brown shirts are out to get us.
John Bennett, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you Patriots and what you're doing. So thanks for having me on the show tonight. There's so many legislators out there that they just say, well, I don't know where I stand on this. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. Well, the Constitution wasn't written for someone that has a doctorate degree. It was written for people like me. Well, you're probably a lot smarter than I am. It was written for other people.
We've clearly never met, John.
But I will say this, that Constitution, America as a whole, we have a moral standard. And U.S. Code identifies 4 primary sources of organic law for the United States. And the Declaration of Independence, it was the first one that obviously, as you guys know, was our birth certificate. That's the ideal of who we are. And it lays the foundation for the principles which undergird our laws and government. And the weight of the ideal that all human beings are created equal in the eyes of God, which is the creator of all things. That kind of ideal is what crushed and ended slavery in America. I mean, we adhere to the ideal, and America continues to be the most prosperous, generous, and long-standing constitutional republic in the history of the world. Not a democracy, like a lot of our legislators try to say. Our founders hated the idea of a democracy. And the Declaration identifies the law of nature and nature's God as the foundation for our constitutional republic. And it is America's moral standard for our law and government. And that is the law of nature and nature's God, which is Jesus Christ. We've gotten so far away from that, which all of our unalienable rights is enshrined and protected by the Constitution.
Now, after last Monday night's show, John Bennett was on. If you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. I said something in there. I said, because of who he is, what he stands for, and because I know he's authentic, I am in John Bennett's corner. After the show, my phone starts ringing. And I was called upon to make good on my claim to be in his corner. So I'm declaring my candidacy for vice chairman of the OKGOP.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Now, it's not for any agenda or priorities of my own, but to support and assist a chairman, John Bennett. And I'm going to let it go there. The people who've talked to me, I'm going to leave it up to them to make their own statements. But I told many of them, I said, Monday night, I'll do it live on 3DPolitics.
So one of the things, this is impressive, breaking news once again, Van always bringing us breaking news.
Yeah.
I swore we weren't breaking news, and he's like, "Oh yeah, watch this."
My beer.
But I will say, I mean, I even with those people that I've disagreed with in the political arena, it takes a lot of guts and courage, literally courage, to run any political campaign. So you are running, say again, for what?
It is state vice chairman. Now,
And
it's
state
a
vice
non
chairman.
thing.
Is this a public elected position or a party
No,
elected
this
position?
this is at our party state convention. We'll have to choose a chairman and a vice chairman. John has put his hat in the ring. To my knowledge, he's the only one who has for chairman. And but we need also a vice chairman. I would not be doing this if John wasn't a strong candidate for chairman.
Oh, this is like reverse neighborhood football, where instead of the team captain says, "I'll pick that guy," the guy out there says, "I'll pick that team captain." Nice job. Wow.
Well, you know,
amazing.
yeah, it's really important that a vice chair be compatible with the chairman. We've seen in recent years multiple times, especially in the last 10 years. Now, there's been some great teams. I have to say, you know, Matt Pinnell and Pam Pollard, they work together well. But of course, you know, Matt's a people person. Matt's pretty easy to get along with. Now, Pam may have some stories.
Talk about Pam.
Yeah, but again, we've had some very confrontational times with the former Senator Randy Brogdon and Estela Hernandez, and that became pretty big news. And, you know, just last year, we had a breakdown because we had two people that for whatever reason, and I know them both, and I've talked to them both, and I've heard both of them say things, and they'll both tell you what I said. I said, you're both responsible to pick up the phone and call the other one.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, these are the things, I want to do. I see a lot of needs. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about things. The thing that, and I did tell John Bennett yesterday, I called him, said, okay, I'm going to do this. I said, John, I've already gone on the record supporting you. You decide, who you're going to support. I'm not asking any, reciprocity. But I said, what I believe I hear you saying is the Oklahoma Republican Party needs to reclaim their brand. What does it mean? What do we stand for? And protect that brand. Protect what we are.
Because doubling is the concept that leads us to exponential numbers. That's how you get to the third power, etc., is through the concept of doubling. And so the idea of doubling is really a radical and extreme concept. My father showed me that you can take 0.036 of an inch, which is about the thickness of one sheet of newspaper, and you don't have to fold it too many times before you're already at the thickness that takes you to the moon, because you start doubling so many feet, and pretty soon you're into miles instantly. And when you're into miles, you're at the moon. And so the idea of doubling is a radical and extreme idea. And so here is the headline to lead us into the minimum wage. Biden, Democrats seek ambitious hike in U.S. minimum wage. From the article, when President Joe Biden unveiled a $1.9 trillion stimulus proposal earlier this month, few were surprised by the plan's hefty price tag or sweeping scope. More striking was Biden's inclusion of a measure to more than double the federal minimum wage to $15. So here we are with what I consider to be extreme radicalism, doubling the minimum wage. And why is it radical? Because he's talking about doubling, which is insanely radical. It doesn't seem like it is, but it is. Doubling is exponential spending is what that is. Colloquialpedia, which is what I call Wikipedia, because it's where all the morons go to look, so that's where I go to look first. 1349, it's basically, they claim that there was a maximum wealth in 1349 from some guy who didn't want the nobles to get too rich. But in 1602 is, well, the welfare state, in my opinion, starts. Queen Elizabeth starts basically what becomes the poor tax. But I'll give you guys a chance to respond now. Pretense of the minimum wage laws is that it protects the worker from the employer, when actually the minimum wage laws restrict the employee more than they restrict the employer.
Now, some things are just paradigm shift, but some things are direct response of what minimum wage has done to force laborers to pay somebody more than the job is worth.
All right. We're into the weeds of the mechanism. Let's get back into the philosophies of the minimum wage laws. And my contention is that the minimum wage laws create criminals in two different ways, one by mechanism and one by degradation of society. The employee is restricted and legally prohibited from bargaining for his own wage. If he does so, he's a criminal. And so,
okay, Tom,
yes,
you think you're getting us out of the weeds?
not out of the weeds, into the weeds of the philosophy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Other weeds, man. So if a person is legally barred from getting a job despite their willingness to work, it's quite easy to understand that they may turn to a life of crime. So there's two different ways that minimum wage laws either create or encourage crime. Now, here's the one I really want to get into. With nonverbal communication, what's 90% of communication is nonverbal communication. And my contention is that the employment for the employee is 90% something other than wage. Who gets paid only looking at the dollars? Otherwise, ladies would always make their money horizontal because that's where they could make the most money the most often. But they don't go for how much money. Why? Because they want a minimum love of job.
I'm sorry, Tom. That had gone way over my head, but on the rebound, I got it. Okay. Horizontal comment.
Sticks with me as fast as I talk fast. You got to listen fast too. But the fact is, minimum level of job is not guaranteed by the government.
Yeah.
They reduce you to a number that's called wage. You're not
Yeah.
guaranteed any exposure in the industry. You're not guaranteed any experience in the industry. And what are the two things you want more than the money? Exposure in the industry and experience in the industry. And they give you none of that. Okay? I love this one here that I came up with. Minimum wage laws deny the tenets of both capitalism and communism from each according to his ability, to each according to government dictate. This is the way they work it. So it even though, remember, the labor movement was a capitalist movement to start, and the communists, like they are parasites, always do, come in and they usurped it and took over the laborers' unite routine, where we own our own labor, okay,
Yeah.
where we get to bargain for our own labor. The communists came in and unionized that bull crap, and the fact is now it's according to government dictate. You don't get according to your need, you get according to what the government dictate is. There's no freedom of alternatives. Useful idiots believe that laborers' need is defined by government. And that's the screw of communism, is they lie to you. And they tell you according to your need. No, according to their dictate. But I've got another great analogy on this minimum wage thing here about, you guys familiar with the Cambrian explosion where fossils are concerned? You ever heard of the Cambrian?
I vaguely remember it.
Well,
I've slept since then.
The Cambrian explosion is the fossil record when essentially every animal philo we know today exploded onto the scene in divine fashion with no evolutionary record before it.
Okay.
That's why
Yep.
they call it an explosion. And so this is the minimum wage problem, is that the minimum wage denies the reality of a gradient scale growth of skills in demand for a litmus test of an explosion in a skill for a beginner. See, marketable skills that require hours of practice do not suddenly pop into existence like the Big Bang. Okay, so what they're expecting from the minimum wage law is that the kid or the young intro worker will simply have zero skills and then suddenly be worth minimum wage. And that's why my line here, do minimum wage workers manifest themselves without evolutionary explanation like the divine Cambrian explosion? And the answer, of course, is no. President Roosevelt, 1937, quote, all but the hopeless reactionary will agree that to conserve our primary resources and manpower, government must have some control over maximum hours, minimum wages, the evil of child labor, and the exploitation of organized labor. That's a typo. Exploitation of unorganized labor is what he said. But look how Roosevelt in 37 says the hopeless reactionary, like the person who privately owns property, must agree that government should have control over maximum hours, minimum wages, and the evil of child labor, which means they're going to control the amount you can make, how much you get paid, and David's children. The main point I'm trying to bring out about the minimum wage laws is they're deceitful. They don't do what they say. They do the opposite of what they say. They don't protect the employee. They protect the employer much more. Also, they're disingenuous with their use. 1993, Representative John Dent from Pennsylvania used the minimum wage laws to favor his desired factories in the North to compete with the factories in the South. He said, quote, we had to do something. We were losing all our jobs to the South. So they used the minimum wage not to protect the employee, to manipulate the factories the way they want them.
Yeah.
Well, to protect their factory employees.
The ones
down in the South.
No, it's not. It's not capitalism. It's fascism. What'd you call it the other day, Van? It's not crony capitalism.
Protectionism. It is crony capitalism.
Yeah. Crony capitalism is actually textbook fascism or corporatism.
It's corporate. Yeah, I want to deny the use of crony capitalism, because when you add the crony, it's no longer capitalism.
That's right.
It's some other thing.
And now, Tom, we've got another aspect to this that's important, because when you see the government become the employer and they set a minimum wage, for instance, teacher wages.
Right.
And when you see that at least a third of the teachers in our public schools are getting minimum wage, minimum teacher wage,
to quickly finish this off before the half hour, Congress raised the minimum wage in nominal terms by 46% between 1977 and 1981. A federal commission estimated that the minimum wage hikes there resulted in a loss of 644,000 jobs, including jobs that were not created. 1983 General Accounting Office report found teenage workers have greater job losses relative to their share of the population or the unemployed workforce. That is worse than adults. That is, the minimum wage hurts teenage workers mostly. Okay.
Absolutely.
President Carter's minimum wage study commission noted that, quote, an explicit purpose of the minimum wage was and is to protect adult workers from low wage competition from youth, end quote. Okay. Well, that didn't tell me anything about protecting the minimum wage worker. That just says ageism. We're trying to protect these old folks can't work as fast. Congress raised the minimum wage in 1989 from $3.35 an hour to $4.25 an hour. A 1991 National Restaurant Association survey found that as a result of that legislation, 44% of restaurants were forced to reduce the number of employee hours worked, and 42% reduced the number of people employed. So minimum wage crushes jobs and kills children. Okay. Secretary of Labor Robert Reich Clinton administration argued for a minimum wage hike on July 20th of 1993 for one reason. The hike was for, quote, public perception, end quote. One more and then I'm done. Even some federal courts have ruled some convicts must be paid the minimum wage for work they perform in prison. And that is from a San Francisco Chronicle, June 25, 1992, by Jim Doyle's quote from the title, Some Inmates Entitled Minimum Wage. These things are all documented. As we finish the minimum wage laws, and the whole point of me bringing this up is to prove how immoral Biden is by suggesting the radical concept of doubling the minimum wage. Doubling is a radical, exponential, ridiculous, absurd maneuver, okay? And to radically double the minimum wage is an immoral act. Both the employer and employee accept government interference in a private contract. And my last punchline is exposure and experience come before wage to the beginning laborer. 2 of the 3 make the man. Wage is no more than a number. Let them make solar panels and eat cake. There you go.
Okay, there's one more thing that we got to throw in here before the break. And that is, remember that especially federal government wage contracts, union contracts, are tied to the minimum wage. So the way that these overpaid federal workers get bigger raises, to raise the minimum wage. And when you double it, you double their salary.
That's correct.
So they're going to be making
correct.
6 figures, just about every single one. That's why everybody wants to work for the government.
You weren't supposed to let that out, David.
That's exactly correct. Can't believe that's not on my list. But yes, that's exactly correct. Union wages.
That's why you have me.
Union wages are tied to minimum wages. Raise the minimum wages. Raise all the union wages. Yeah. I'm really pleased you guys seem to agree with all my comments on the minimum wage.
No, it was great. You did a good job.
Let's let Chip Paul, author of State Question 788, tell us.
Oh my gosh, 788 should be one of the greatest examples of a We the People movement ever. I mean, we were opposed by everyone. Again, we had to lead it, but it's not like we had a lot of money or anything. It just, it had to be kind of managed and organized, but that's about all we did. It had kind of a life of its own. It's one of the, greatest, I think, We the People movements ever in history. Ever. Yeah. We live in really interesting times. So I think talking about, liberty and freedom, certainly right now, is something that we all need to be holding on to and, frankly, guarding with everything in us. So it's, our liberties and freedoms are frankly threatened right now. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
Yeah, and thank you. One of the things that, as I connect the dots between things most people don't, there's a gal named Rosa Parks. She sits on a bus and it turns into a big deal. It's a big deal. And here's a guy named Chip Paul. He writes a thing, just him and his wife, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And so it's amazing how these things where it's a simple illustration of an exercising of a simple right that becomes an issue between states' rights versus federal rights, which becomes an exercise of freedom for each individual. So, Chip Paul, I appreciate you being on the show and all the things you're doing to promote individual freedom. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate what you do too, and we all need to keep it up. Really important right now. So,
well, we hope to have you back on the show in the next year and find out what's we're doing to follow up. So here we go with Car Sale Sunday. Yeah. Let's say you got the severed head of a lover in a paper bag and you need to get out of town. Well, if you've got $500 in 15 minutes, we'll have you out of town in half an hour. Van, we're gonna have to work on our production.
I know it. Sorry.
I'm not gonna let you do this.
Oh, I forgot.
I'm not gonna let you do this anymore. You're fired.
I am. Al, we were supposed to transport you.
Not even at the end of the bit here. We're not even at the end of the music here. So much for pre-production. Isn't that your line, Van?
Yeah.
Am I here?
Yes, and I'm fired.
Actually, the thing is, no, you're not here for about another 15 seconds.
Okay. Of course, you got John Bennett, which is just wow. John he's a rock star in the conservative community. I think he just got attacked by the what was it, the Frontier? And then you've got, let's see, of course, our own David Van. Right. You've got, let's see, I guess you've got the incumbent, which would be, what's this guy's name? Oh, I call him Shane Jemison. Shane Jemison. I call him Shame. He's pretty much a lobbyist. He works for the, I think it's the Chickashaws. I mean, I don't know. I've got a real problem with the lobbyists being involved in the party at that level.
Says here, Shane was the guest speaker at the Garvin County Democrat Party meeting. He was evicted from his apartment. So there's a little dirt that you've dug up. And I mean, that happens to people sometimes.
You know what it does? People get behind and they lose their job and stuff. But let me tell you what usually happens. They get that eviction notice and they leave. It is rare when you have to put you through the court process and hire an attorney and spend all that money. That to me was kind of troubling. Huh. People fall on the hard times. I get it. But this isn't one of those.
But do we know what? I mean, that sounds like we're digging up dirt. Are we? I mean, is there a reason that we would bring that up? That would
absolutely
come up?
It goes to the man's character.
Well, maybe there's a disagreement between he and the landlord.
Well,
and it's just simply a disagreement.
All right. I mean, it's public.
Do they not have the right to, their day in court and settle things one way or the other?
I think he did have a day in court, didn't they?
He did.
I mean, wasn't this a court proceeding or no? Did it not go to that?
There was a court proceeding. I believe it was settled. A lot of times they settle those things before they get in front of the judge because, the deadbeat knows what's going to happen when he gets before the judge. They usually make a settlement on it. And that's what happened in this case.
Throwing bombs. You're just chunking bombs here, Al.
Yeah, I mean, this was over money. We know it was over money or something.
Okay, look, here's the deal.
I'm curious because I don't want to use this forum to be that somebody has a problem with somebody is one thing, but
let's get to the politics.
Throwing dirt.
Character matters, though. Wow. Character matters. So we learned that with Bill Clinton.
Tell me about Jemison's politics. What makes him from his programs and his ideologue? What is it? What do you got on him?
You know what? He's working for the tribes. Guess who he's going to represent when he's a GOP vice chair? He's going to represent the tribe's interest. Why do you think they sent him there?
Well, okay. Well, I don't think that's necessarily bad, but I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you said the Cherokee Indian.
What I'm saying is, I don't think that's a slam. Anybody who's is a member of if you were elected, Al, you would represent the Sooner Tea Party people.
I would like to think I would represent Republican values.
Well, maybe that's what Jemison thinks.
Yeah. My thing, I think, is
How long is he going to hold that job if he steps on the tribe's toes?
Yeah. I would have a problem with, say, a campaign consultant also running a party, because how do you have a fair primary? In fact, I had this talk with Natasha Dahm, and she just said, no, I'm done with campaign managing and consulting. Okay, fine. But I appreciated that pledge. And you know what? I voted for her. So, there are some jobs that are going to be a conflict or a real problem if you're going to be a party chair. There's some things you got to stay out.
And are you saying, Van, that this is part of the problem with Jemison, is that he's a
more so as I know he has worked for campaign consulting companies very recently, as Cindy Byrd, who I supported. I don't anymore. And I admit I screwed up there because I saw how she went after Epic.
It's hard to find a good one.
It is. I've supported a lot that I've regretted.
3DPolitics came about 2 years ago. It's kind of amazing. A little over 2 years. The way this happened was 2 years ago. I think Lori Gracie, now Oldham, invited me to come out to the pavilion out there and do, I think, what was the GOP convention then. And I thought, now how can I make this worth my while? So I conceived this idea of 3DPolitics, where I would interview the experts in the field, and I would be here to learn and interview these guys and find out what the heck was going on. And so that was the brainchild. Now, the reason I picked David Van and David Oldham was because previous to that, in 2016, I ran for mayor against Dewey Bartlett and G.T. Bynum, which I thought they were just basically two peas in a pod. Story longer. But when I did run for mayor, I ran into a couple people. And one of them was David Oldham. And I went to one of these meetings, and this guy steps up, and I'm like, wow, this guy's chipper. He meets people well, is what I thought. He's like, hey, I'm David Oldham, bam, So anyway, he sits down, and he makes a Keynesian joke, a Keynesian economic joke. It was almost like a shit test, right? It's like blah, 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 Keynesian joke. And I'm like, God. I'm like, always from then on, I had respected Oldham, the only guy I ever know to drop a Keynesian economic joke on me. Yeah. Like, wow.
Well, what was so amazing was I didn't have to explain it to you, Tom.
That was the test, I think. That's how that worked. We both cackled, and from then on, I just basically loved Oldham. So then what I considered to be the win of the election for me was getting the all of the right support from the right people. And when I got those three endorsements, that was the win for me. Sure. I mean, I could go down in flames politically, but if I win the righteous, that's good enough for me. There you go. So to win Charlie Biggs, support Michael Bates and David Van in 2016, that basically is a win. But anyway, that is how I ran into David Van and David Oldham. I thought, what can we do to platform this? I created the idea of 3DPolitics, and these guys are backing me up to be here to teach me each week about state politics and constitutional politics. And so I appreciate why you got into politics, why you're running, and your three major points of what you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, for those who may not know, I'm the pastor of Sheridan Church right here in Tulsa. And I own my own business, Lawmeyer Investment Company. I got 5 wonderful, beautiful kids with my wife, Kendra. So we have, a great family, great life, great church. Back in 2018, I was eyeing maybe running for state senate in District 34 of Oklahoma, which is where I live in Owasso, and just kind of working behind the scenes, looking at what would that look like to run for the state senate. Then 2020 hit, and everything changed. And our church came under attack from our incompetent mayor, our radical city council, and the weaponized health department, because we refused to shut down. And we also refused to enforce the mask. Now, we're not anti-maskers. We have masks available, but the majority of the people in our church didn't want to wear them while they were at church, so we didn't enforce it. And I found myself as a pastor in a fight with our local government Thankfully, I got a strong church, a lot of fighters like me, and we won. We won against the mayor, we won against the city council, and we also won against the health department. All three of those different battles, we stayed open, we did church, and we didn't enforce the mask, and we got stronger through that entire process. But while that was happening, it was about in October that I just started sensing that, the Lord was leading me to run for the United States Senate. Now, I wasn't eyeing the U.S. Senate. I was looking at the state Senate here in Oklahoma. And I wasn't sure how to begin to tell people that I'm thinking about running for the United States Senate and challenging James Langford without them thinking I was absolutely crazy. I'm a pastor, I'm a business owner. I've never been into politics. And I'd be honest with you, that's not necessarily the goal. But I realized how important to have strong leadership in those positions, because I experienced very poor leadership on the end of the city of Tulsa. And I started to watch some things when it came to James Langford that I was very unimpressed with. Back in June, whenever it was the summer of rioting and there was just so much tension within our nation, James Langford, he didn't come out and say, I support the bill to replace Columbus Day with Juneteenth as a federal holiday. He actually wrote the bill, and that concerned me. Why is a senator for the state of Oklahoma jumping on board with this cancel culture theme that is taking place? Now, obviously, as soon as Senator Langford realized that there was going to be some major backlash to that, he pulled back very quickly. But we have to remember, he wrote that bill then. And then I watched him after the election. That was so crazy, flip and flop like a fish out of water. It was, 1 minute his foot was down and he was going to make a stand. Then the next minute, he's caving. And so it was just something that didn't sit well with me. And when he came back to Tulsa and apologized to the Black community for questioning fraud in those cities like Philadelphia and Atlanta, because they're highly African American, and he apologized for questioning those races having fraud within them. I said to myself, something's not right with this. Why is he apologizing for questioning, which all of us recognize it's not racist to question what happened? And when he apologized, I said, this isn't good. This isn't good. We've got a very, very weak individual. He's a good guy, mind you. James Langford is a good guy, but he's a very weak leader. And right now, our country doesn't have time for good, weak leaders. We need good people who are strong fighters. And that's just sort of been the trend that I've had in 2020. So to answer your question, why are we running? Well, I believe the Lord guided me to run. I didn't know what that would look like. And I had to take the advice that I'd give anybody in my congregation. If God's telling you to do something and God is confirming it with other people in your life, you better do what God's telling you to do. So it's easier to preach that than it is to practice that. And so we're doing it, and we're having tremendous success right now. Absolutely tremendous success.
Tuesday, what's coming up for you? A big thing on Tuesday?
We have the biggest event so far in the short life of this journey. We've been in the exploratory phase of what would it look like to run for the United States Senate, and not just challenge James Langford. We're going to replace James Langford. What would that look like? And well, we had a big break. General Michael Flynn has endorsed me for the United States Senate, and we are flying him into Tulsa March the 16th, which is a Tuesday, and we're going to have a huge event out at the Riverwalk. General Flynn's going to share. I'm going to share. It's going to be at 6:30. In fact, you're the first media outlet that we're telling. We got a press release going out tonight. So this is breaking news live.
There you go, Van. There you go. Who's breaking news now, Van? There it is.
Breaking news. So it's going to be at the James Riverwalk at the Drive Time headquarters. It's going to be at 6:30. General Flynn will be there. I'll be there. And we've got some others lined up as well. So it's going to be a great time. It's a big honor.
Jackson Lawmeyer, we're getting ready to beam you out. Anything else before you get out of here?
No, I appreciate coming on and learning from you all. And I hope to continue to come back on. They always say if you're you're good at a church, they'll invite you back for a second time. So we'll find out how I did tonight if you guys invite me back
we
again.
want you back. Either way, we appreciate all the time you spent. We got movers and shakers, and I have to say, in my fine raising of children, I have 2 new grandbabies. And so as of Thursday, we had twins fraternal. Phoenix McCay won and Hazel Kate won. And so we've got 2 beautiful, perfect human beings added to the McCay family.
Great.
So we're excited about that. And don't I hold up well?
Hey, it's great. You're going to have
bad,
2 more kids to babysit you some
right.
nights, you know.
I'm frozen in my youth, and the world keeps getting old around me. All right, without further ado, we're going to bring David D'Ambroso in here. Now, David D'Ambroso's done a political analyst, a lot of door knocking, and worked for Stitt to help bring him into office. And so let's bring David D'Ambroso in. Look, analyst, a lot of door knocking, and worked for Stitt to bring him office. As you can see, he was a role player for Kevin Costner in The Invisible Man. And so, David, we're pleased to have you on the show tonight. And with full transparency, I got to say, David we know David personally. And it's only a matter of time before.
And he's only recently become a deaf mute. Invisible deaf mute.
I'm sure glad we got all that pre-show production worked out.
I guess we'll have to maybe do.
So I'll just put him in the waiting room again, and then I thought I had this all figured out with him, but something didn't.
Oh man!
Who knows? The baby may have cried.
Oh, that's true. He's got babies too.
Oh gosh.
Let's see. Here we go. I said, so what we know though is David D'Ambroso is also running against, all of this Zoom flub has to do with us trying to set this up. Let me see if I can bring him in again. There he is. Okay. All right. My fault, David. I'm sorry. The delay on my phone, I got going faster than I sent it. That was my fault. I apologize for screwing that. And there was no actual sound effect that we planned for you also either. So
well, I'm glad that you recognize that it's your fault, Tom. This is our
anything that happens around here is my fault. Trust me.
Never my fault, right? I'm just a politician.
This time it's mine. It's all mine, baby.
Yeah.
So we're pleased to have you here. You are really one of those people that gets out and campaigns hard. You knock 1,000 doors. I know you helped when a field director for Kevin Stitt, and you've done a lot of other things. Tell us a little bit about what you've done and why you're in the race.
Sandy Bird. Yeah, I've done a lot of activism. I've done a lot of campaign work, and through that, I've made a lot of connections. But really, it's not about me. It's about promoting the people of the United States and its Constitution. And so I just go wherever I can forward that goal the most.
So first, Oldham, what's your question for the candidate?
Well, as I've been talking to people, and I've been out and about and even across the country now since the election, the question I have is, what do you think should be going on at the federal level and in the Senate about the election? If anything, what should the federal government be doing?
Well, you had that great 12th Amendment opportunity that Senator Langford fumbled on January 6th. And Vice President Pence, I think they had a fundamental misunderstanding of just the plain text of the Constitution, which, if we had a constitutionalist in office already, this is why it's so key. You would not have had that problem in the Senate if you had more constitutionalists there that understood the 12th Amendment. No, the vice president just doesn't unilaterally decide who wins the presidential contest. He sends it back to the states for clarification, so the states can have their constitutional rule and allow the legislator to actually determine the terms of the race, not secretaries of state or governors. So we didn't have that constitutional leadership, and that was the problem with Langford. So, he ran, I guess, this Baptist youth camp, which was gigantic. I believe it's called Falls Creek, and he was beloved. And I don't have a problem with James Langford as an individual, but that's really for God to decide. No one knows what kind of individual James Langford truly is, or anyone is, but God himself. So I stay out of that. I can only deal with outcomes and actions. He had very poor outcomes and actions. And so I think in my comment earlier about Lehmeyer, I don't know much about him other than the 10 minutes I caught half of the interview with him on your program. I was not 100% pleased with his constitutional answers. He shows potential. I think he's already better than Langford, but I think we find him in the same place that we were with Langford 6 or 8 years ago in 14 and 16. And so we just didn't know. He was a nice guy. He was a married Christian businessman. This kind of thing, we don't really know by their past action what they're going to do in the future in regards to the Constitution. What kind of candidates have they supported? Why did they support those candidates? Have they been on the record where they are about the Constitution and the role of government? So you're rolling the dice. So someone referenced President Trump. You're right. We didn't know with President Trump. We just had to believe based on his charisma and saying, what he even said to Flint, Michigan, right? In certain urban areas, what do you have to lose at this point? The establishment of both parties had betrayed the people for so long. We just wanted to take a chance on an outsider. And so this is what I want to say. Donald Trump is a guy who said he had never asked God for forgiveness. Yeah. So the man couldn't have been a Christian at the time he was running for office. He said he crossed the bridge when he got there. Now, I believe that has since changed. That's my opinion. But what a great leader. Have we had a better president in 70 years? And so my Christian faith is very meaningful. Actually, I went to Bible school, but as far as politics are concerned, I don't lead with that. I don't think that it's inappropriate. I think pastors need to take more of a role. And I would like to see more pastors reject government rule and reject 501(c)(3) status, because it puts the state at the head of the church rather than Jesus Christ. And so Trump did something really phenomenal with 501(c)(3). He unshackled many of the churches, where he stopped First Amendment restrictions that they had and fear of reprisal from the IRS like we had under Obama. And many of these pastors did not move beyond the invisible fence. So I will compliment the little bit I heard about Lehmeyer is that he seems to be tackling some pretty prickly, non-popular topics from the pulpit. So sounds like he might be a courageous man, and we definitely need courageous men. So Pence, I think, strawmanned the position that American patriots wanted him to take. So he made a statement, something to the effect of that he could not unilaterally decide the outcome of the election. We were not saying that. That was not the argument.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Clarification for him to send back the contested electors to the state legislators. Say, this is our set of electors that we have officially decided and clarified on.
David D'Ambroso, always a pleasure to have your energy and excitement. We appreciate your campaigning, all the stuff you've done behind the scenes before you got here, and now you're willing to step up and take this to the next step. Everybody is encouraging you to reach out to Lehmeyer and see if you guys can't formulate some sort of coalition so that you guys are moving in the same direction.
Dialogue's great, and I encourage that. I encourage debate, so.
Well, very good. Okay, we are going to beam you out. Are you ready?
See you later.
Let's see if it works.
Thanks for coming.
There he goes. D'Ambroso, thanks for showing up. We appreciate you being on the show. We want to have you back again when you can. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Dave. It's amazing. Ron Vilmos-Smith, thanks for joining us. It's been weeks in the making, and we appreciate you showing up. Tulsa County GOP chair just recently won that. Tonight, I want to know, what is the Tulsa County GOP chair? What do they do? What are your duties? And then lead us into what do you want to do that fixes stuff from what hasn't been done yet?
Well, my duties are to represent the Republican Party and to help in organizing precincts and to grow the party. Of course, you've got to raise money as well, but basically that's what my responsibilities are. I've been having numerous meetings. We are setting up a medias and communications. We are working on, just different ideas that we've got. I've got a great team. I probably have the most diverse team of any Republican Party I know, at least in the state, if not in the United States. We have 3 African American individuals, and there are 4 women on my leadership team.
Tonight we have Jenny White, Christine Leverifon, and John Bennett, all 3 lined up. The invitation was sent also to Charles Ortega, but we could not find him in time for the show this evening. So I want to tell you who we've got on first tonight. Up first, Jenny White. She's got a master's in biology. She's worked in advertising, epidemiology. She's a teacher. She is a co-founder of Reclaiming Oklahoma Parent Empowerment. 12 years grassroots organizing. She is married, a homeschooler, and currently serving as mayor of Luther, Oklahoma. Let's bring in our first guest, Jenny White.
Okay. Honestly, I'm running because, I've spent a lot of years doing grassroots organizing, and it's been kind of inside and outside the party. But one of the things that kind of has frustrated me over the years is that there were times when I felt kind of left out of the party. And it was really interesting because after the 6th, January 6th, and we went to Washington, D.C., everything was so upside down. I mean, I couldn't think straight. I mean, all I did was sit over my phone and read news. I mean, it was bizarre. And I think I just kind of, I know, it couldn't even, it was the weirdest time I think I've ever had. And I've had a lot of weird times in 58 years, but that was weird. And then kind of what ended up happening was I sort of started getting my feet back under me. And then I got back into, I thought, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to get back into the party and we'll just see how it goes. So I went to my precinct meeting.
The state GOP chair. What do you think that job is?
Well, it's got 3 parts, and without going into being super geeky about it, basically it's to support national, statewide elections, but also at the precinct level, and then also national elections. And, my big thing for years has been grassroots. I mean, that's what I've done for 12 whole years. And I think that people don't understand how the party works. They don't understand that the boots on the ground, the people in the precincts are the ones that make everything happen. They're the ones that can get people elected. They're the ones that can find people for elected official spots. That's what they do. And I just think that my particular policy and what I really am excited about doing is recharging the grassroots by training them, educating them. I wrote a lot of blogs and they educated people. And I think when people have education and they actually see the instead of just coming out and saying, well, you're a bunch of idiots, that's bad. I don't think that's helpful. Talking down to people or, being ugly, it's not helpful. I mean, it really is true that you win more flies with honey than vinegar. But what you really do, you make a stance by making your case in education. Okay, well, let's talk about this. What are the facts? This is the fact number 1. This is the fact number 2. This is the fact number 3. Make your own conclusions, but these are the facts. And I do think that really, and here's another reason why I think that approach is really good. I have heard from people when I've spoken before, because I have a program that I do right now on being a patriot. And they say, because I say, stand up for yourself. Don't let the bullies back you down. You tell them what's going on. Well, but I don't know how to articulate my case. I don't know how to explain this to people. And the best thing you can do is give them education, because as soon as they're educated, they can learn how to fight for themselves, but they can't fight if they don't know what they're fighting for. So education, I think, is always the best way to go.
Jenny White, thank you.
Thank you.
We beamed you on like this. It's amazing. It's magical. There it is. Precinct chair, Roger County chair, district rules committee, state rules committee, and at large alternate delegate for the National Convention 2020, Christine Leverifon. We appreciate you being here. We just got through talking to Jenny White. We're going to ask you basically the same questions, your motivation for running, your policy directions and solutions. We're all about solutions.
Okay.
So go for it.
Go for what my platform is. And
Well,
what-
kind of tell me, what is your motivation for running? Why are we running, and why did you decide, and how did you decide this time I'm running? I have my story. I figured you had yours.
Well, for me, it's pretty personal. Just as a precinct chair of Rogers County, through everything that's happened over the last few years, just serving on a county level, I just recognize that little bit by little bit that our state's voice is being taken away, that our constitutional amendments are not being clarified and educated. And so just as serving as a county chair and knowing the sign of the times, knowing that this is a 2-year gubernatorial race for our governor, and the boots on the ground, I want to do the work, serving as a small business owner and serving in areas of the past with school systems. I just feel like, this is a time for a rebuild and a reboot. And that's just encouraging for me as far as, just the direction at the precinct level and the county level. As far as policy, our number one is our vote and our voice. And we have that coming across right now. We should be calling our senators and getting that taken care of. I mean, there's a vote going on right now on that floor. And if we lose our vote, we're in big trouble. But, we also have our 2A rights, and we know the blessings that we're here and that we're standing for here in Oklahoma. But, abortion, I've said it over and over. I'm for the abolishment of it. I'm tired of the gray matter and the pro-life. I feel like we have been exposed to pro-life. If you do this, then we'll allow you to have an abortion. And where we stand on a Republican platform is we're against abortion, but we've given, opportunities and options. If you do this, then you can have one. And a lot of people don't understand that. So it's really, truly educating our platform and coming forth and being truthful. And that starts at the precinct level to see where the need is in the neighborhoods and bringing it to the county.
I mostly appreciate your passion and your efforts to put yourself out there in the campaign. Running for state GOP chair, Christine LaFerrafon. We're going to take her out. We're going to beam her out right now. There it goes. Thanks for being here. See you next time.
Thank you.
There she goes. John Bennett, retired and decorated U.S. Marine combat veteran, Iraq and Afghanistan, 8 years in the Oklahoma House of Representatives, author of SB 1143 and HB 2177. Please welcome to the show, without further ado, John Bennett, ladies and gentlemen. We'll beam him in. Thanks for joining us. Tell us about your motivation for running. Why are you running for state GOP chair?
Well, first, I spent 8 years in the House. I ran. I felt calling to run to do something to make an impact. I spent 8 years in the House and decided to term limit myself out. I was done with politics at that time. I did my part, done the best that I could. I found someone to replace me. That was a good constitutional Christian patriot, which is in there today. So we were able to keep the seat by the Republican Party. But I was done with it till when all the things happened to Trump, whenever they threw him under the bus and they sent you to call. And I thought about it, prayed about it, and I just felt, you know what? There's a time and place for everything. And now is the time for a fighter, someone that's going to stand up, not just kick the can down the road, but pick the can up and smash it. So I was perfectly fit for that. And because in my mind, after what they did to the president of the United States, that wasn't just to do it to him. That was a message to the American people. That was a direct attack on our constitutional republic. And in my mind, we're at the edge of the cliff. And if we don't stand and fight now and put freedom on the offensive where it belongs, we're going to be pushed off the cliff, and we're going to lose our constitutional republic. And I'm not going to let that happen. If it happens, it'll be over them running over me. But I'm going to stand and fight. Several folks were calling me after that had happened, and I was seriously considering it. And finally, I did what I thought I needed to do. I thought it was the right thing to do.
What are your main policy directions?
Well, that's a, I guess I could give you a long answer to that short question, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. There's a lot of things swimming through my mind, but we have a structure in the Republican Party now, which by itself is not bad. The problem is people aren't being held accountable to the party platform. We're not communicating across the spectrum. So the state party chairman is not building the bridge between all the county chairmen. The precinct chairman really don't even know what their jobs are in most counties. Some they do, but there's no real standard operating procedure across the board. There's no communication. We don't have a real united party. We're all not going to agree. That's pretty obvious in the Republican Party. We're all a bunch of independent thinking people.
Right.
However, we've got to have that structure. And I think I have a unique experience to bring that structure in, fine tune that, and get us all hopefully going in the same direction. Because we're a force to be reckoned with if we could just get it all together. We're all heading in the same direction anyway. We just got different ideas of how to get there. But I think I have the unique experience to be able to do that. I mean, I've been in charge of hundreds of Marines, and getting all of them to go in one direction is not an easy task either. But that structure and that leadership, if you do it right, you can get them going in that direction.
Do you think that part of the state GOP chair's job is to recruit? I mean, it's a different job to recruit, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The state GOP chair should be highly involved in that. Now, if you're talking about state level wide offices, so state rep, state senator, even your county wide offices, the state party chairman should be offering resources and leadership to help them at the local level do what they need to do, because those are the ones that are on the ground level, and they know if Joe and Jim are in the Republican race, if Jim just switched to Republican, but he's really a Democrat, and that's the way he believes, but he switched to get elected. Because that's actually happened in our district. We had two sheriffs. One was a Republican. He'd been a Republican. We knew him personally and what he believed. And then we had a Democrat that was the current sheriff, switched to Republican to get elected. And we, as a county party, we knew him, and we came out in the primary and told the voters, we told the Republicans, he is not our candidate. He does not abide or uphold Republican Party principles, and we shut him down. But the state party chairman should be able to back those counties up, back those precincts up, and help them, give them resources, and provide that leadership, but let them decide what they need to do.
What are we going to see from a John Bennett administration?
You're going to see someone that's got bold leadership that doesn't just say it during campaigning time, but actually stands on that and stands on our platform, stands on our Constitution, and actually is a voice for the county parties, the precincts, and help and fight for them as well as our party as a whole. The problem is, and we hear all the time, we need more quantity inside the Republican Party. I don't believe that's something we should focus on. I believe we should focus on quality and being who we say we are and what we say we stand on and believe in. And if we do that, then we're going to have people come to the party. I mean, we're seeing it now. More and more people are coming to the party because we showed what we believed in. We stood on those principles, and more people are coming. The problem is when we have, well, I'm just going to say it. Y'all may disagree with me, but when we have a U.S. senators, plural, throw our president under the bus and make a decision based off of emotion instead of off of principle and do what they say they were going to do, we have people that get fed up with the Republican Party and leave. That's why we see an increase in the registered independents. Those folks want to be with the Republican Party, but they feel betrayed and they don't feel the trust anymore because we say one thing, but we do another. But with good leadership and someone leading the way, people will follow that. So whatever it takes, we're going to get it done, whether it's using a platform as a voice, whether it's twisting arms and holding others accountable and making sure they abide by that platform and by the Constitution, or they get unelected. And I will help get that done through the counties and through the precincts.
How can those relationships work better where the party regulars and the legislature are really working in one step and in better outcomes?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. I guess you could say I have insider information. I know how they do things at the Capitol. I know for a fact that they go behind closed doors, say one thing, and come out in front of a camera and say something completely different. I know all the ins and outs. I know the tricks they pull, so I can hold them accountable. And they know that they can't blow smoke up my skirt because I've been there and I've witnessed it and I've been around it for quite some time. Then on the flip side of that, they also know that I'm a pretty straightforward person. I'm not going to attack them unnecessarily. I'm not going to cause chaos or trouble in their campaigns or with who they are or throw them under a bus unless they deserve it. And they know that. So based off of that, a lot of them will be more than happy to sit down with me behind closed doors so we can work that out and we make sure they do the right things. And I'll be completely transparent with them and tell them, listen, your constituents aren't happy. You campaigned on this. You were elected to do this. You're not doing this. You need to change your ways. We're watching you. If you don't, you're going to have to deal with the consequences.
You know, John, I got to say, to be fully transparent, I think James Lankford would look better in a skirt, but I think you fit the uniform better. How does the GOP get rhinos like GT Bynum out of it?
Well, we got to hold them accountable, especially at the precinct and county level. And I would even submit this to you. There is no such thing as a nonpartisan race. The Democrats, they scream that all the time, but then they go back and they get their own candidates. They support their own candidates. They know what they believe in. And they've been kicking our bottoms at the school board level, at the city council level, and at the mayor level, and at even the county commissioners. Even though the county commissioners, we know pretty much where they stand when they file, but those other ones are supposed to be nonpartisan races. Republicans need to quit soft-handing everything. Get in there.
You're so polite. You're going to do great. You're very polite.
We need to quit. I mean, the time for just
it's
as usual is done. We need to get in there and say, this is what we stand on. You are not a Republican. You don't believe in these things. Oh, well, it's nonpartisan. Don't care, because you will take your beliefs into however you govern. And we're not going to have that. You can call it partisan or not. We're not voting for you. We're voting for this guy. He's a Republican and he believes in this, or she believes in this, and we're going to support him. And that's got to be done, though, at the precinct and county levels. And they got to be more engaged and get in there and get in a fight.
What would your answer be? Say to the teachers' strike.
Well, I'll tell you how I handled it when I was in the legislature. I did all my research. I found out how much money they were getting, who was responsible for it, where it went to, and how that broke down from federal, state, and local, how much money they were actually getting versus how much was being reported, and then how that averaged around with all the other states, and apples to apples and oranges to oranges, not just, well, Texas gives their teachers or has $10,000 a year in per pupil funding, and Oklahoma only has $5,000. Okay, why is that? Why is there a disparity? And there was reasons behind that. Same with the pay raises. They said, well, Oklahoma is the lowest in the region, which was an absolute lie. I did the research. Arkansas paid lower base pay. So did Texas, and so did the other surrounding states. They were making more money on average because the local school boards, which are responsible for their raises, were the ones giving them raises. And they didn't, a lot of the teachers didn't even know that the state doesn't give raises. The state, we set the bare minimum.
Yep.
So once I figured all that stuff out, I went out and started educating. I went to my county party first, started educating them. I started educating other activists and telling them, hey, here's the real picture. Here's what's going on. Matter of fact, I even went and paid to have 2 big boards made that had it broke down, all the funding, where it came from, where it went to, and compared it to the other states, and took those around, carried them in my car, and had them in my office whenever people come in and ask me about it. Say,
my card. Yeah.
So I didn't have a problem with the teachers getting a raise. My mother, sister, I had many family members that were teachers.
John, you're so right. I have argued on Facebook for all during that strike. And people are like, the legislature. No. The legislature has done nothing in Oklahoma. The Oklahoma legislature has done nothing but protect minimum wages, essentially, for teachers. And the districts rob the teachers. Districts pay teachers or not. Okay, the legislature does nothing but say you can't pay a teacher less than this amount. Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct. And they were in my office because, well, the teacher pay raise already passed. They were there a week later for the strikes. And I had a bunch in my office and they were telling me, or they asked me, they were very hostile. They said, why aren't you going to vote for the tax increases? Because I made it very obvious I was not voting for a tax increase. And there was 40 of them in my office with the superintendent. And they're saying, we demand you vote for these tax increases. I said, I'm not doing it. And one of them actually looked at me and said, we don't care if you raise taxes on everyone else. We want more money. I said, I'm not doing it because I represent more than just you. And the facts don't support what you're wanting. And called the superintendent out. I said, I won't say his name. Mr. Superintendent, I said, why don't you tell them the truth? Where do they get their raises? And all the teachers were dumbfounded. And so I told it for him. And then I said, how many of you in here have ever been put in for a raise by the superintendent? Not one raised their hand.
Oh,
said, you need to talk to him, not me.
About school funding. You think $2.5 billion every 300 days is enough? I was talking about civil servants. The teachers are civil servants, but yet they argue as though they operate from a free market capitalist position. Teachers in Texas make. Well, Texas has an entirely different constitution that brings in the money totally differently, that pays people at the front end or the back end totally differently. And so there's no reason to compare Oklahoma to Texas when we're paying teachers because we're not operating in a free market. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. But they are feeling a little bit of heat now because, and I'm 100% parent choice. I've got, my kids have been in public school. My 3 oldest graduated public school. My 2 youngest have been in public school, private Christian school, and now they're in a charter school. And we as parents, we should have full control over where our children go to school. The government should have no monopoly on that. They shouldn't be forced to go to a government school. It's my choice. They're my children. And I know what the best learning environment is for them. And to be honest, right now, after going to all of those for my children, the charter school is the best program for them. And they are excelling at it. Yeah, I will leave you and all your listeners with this thought. And this is not just some kind of campaign slogan. I really believe our republic is in danger. And if we don't stand and fight for it now, we won't have any freedoms to fight for tomorrow. We've got to stand and fight for this republic. We've got to lock arms at the gates of freedom, and we've got to put freedom back on the offensive where it belongs.
Beautiful, baby. John Bennett running for state GOP chair. We're going to beam you out. You ready?
Ready.
There you go. All right, we're beaming him out. There he goes, John Bennett running for state GOP. Thank you very much for being here, John. Appreciate you very much. You bet.